Alright, it's currently 12 a.m., middle of the night. Let's get this show on the road. Hi peoples, it's me, Gabrielle. I just made 6-year-old Gabrielle so happy by saying that, because way back in 2008-ish, I used to pretend I was a vlogger, and I didn't post any of the videos I made anywhere, but you know, kids are silly, and I was having fun. Look at me now though. But I digress, because I've been patiently waiting to make this video. So for today's OC Lore Talk Speedpaint, we have the show-stopping, jaw-dropping, wonderfully emotionless Jace Wolmarans. Also, little side note, I made a playlist for all these videos, so be sure to catch up on all of them if you haven't already. But yes, Jace and I go way back. I first made him in 2014 when I was 12 because I wanted a fictional boyfriend, and the fictional characters that were already existing at the time just weren't cutting it. So I took matters into my own hands.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck?
Thus, Jace was born. In the early days of his character development, he was just a really tall, emo tattoo artist, but he's become so much more in the past almost 10 years of fleshing him out now. Jace's look has evolved from what I first started with, similar to Keiko, as Iggy kind of switched tracks from his initial character design, like Seth. The evolution of his character design was mainly influenced by what I found most attractive in a guy at different points in my life. But eventually I had a concrete version of what I was satisfied with for him, and didn't really let my own feelings influence his character too much. I knew I wanted him to be a cold, brooding character, very in his own lane type of guy. Introverted, and despite his massive size, someone who isn't the center of attention. He more so just beams and observes. He listens more than he talks, and when he does, it's rarely anything nice. So since I've spent a really long time ironing out the nitty-gritty about this guy, let's get right into his basic info. So, in the beginning of my story, he's 30 years old. His birthday is November 1st, so that makes him a Scorpio. And woo, a Scorpio he is. He's loyal, he's passionate about what he loves, and very creative. I kept his passion of being a tattoo artist throughout his evolution, and I think around 2015 to 16-ish, I added on the MMA fighting. I just thought it made sense for his character, because a lot of potent emotions being bottled up needs a healthy release, right? He has a very sharp memory, despite getting his head knocked around quite a bit. But even for how unbothered he seems, he can get quite possessive and jealous. And let me tell you, he is not someone you want to piss off. That's why him and Iggy get along so well. But we'll get into their friendship later. Jace's MTBI type is an INTJ-A. He's very rational and logical when it comes to problem solving, since he takes all of his emotions out in the ring. He can see right through people's fakeness and doesn't take anything from anyone. He's his own boss, he follows the beat of his own drum, and he is not a leader nor a follower. He is more than content being himself, and is definitely the most independent out of all my characters. Everyone else needs some sort of attention, but Jace avoids it. Again, super hard to do when you're a whopping 6'8" and 220 pounds, as well as being the most vicious fighter in the South, but he gets by just fine, mainly since people stay out of his way. Now, for some background info, Jace was originally from the North. How crazy! He definitely doesn't look like he's from the North. That prim and proper place. But that's exactly right. He never fit in, and he never felt like he belonged there. When Jace was born 30-ish years ago from the current story timeline, the Dispatera Executive Board had implemented a single child rule in both the North and the South due to resource management and population control. So, of course, with his northern parents wanting to fit in, favored his older brother Ryan over him. Ryan was the perfect child, a total mama's boy, and was a sheep. He followed the path that every other person in the North took. He went to school to get a good job, to eventually make a lot of money, being a lawyer. And of course there's nothing wrong with that, but Jace was the complete opposite. As a child, he was always finding a way to get a rise out of his parents, but it was mainly just for attention, because he was thinking, why weren't they giving me the same treatment as my brother? And, did Jace really have to act out just to get them to acknowledge him? However, it was really his mother he despised. Dr. Hina Aoki was a pediatric doctor. And one thing about those northern doctors is that they love doing experiments, especially with Terabane. So, of course, what better candidate for Terabane testing than a son who was seen as a mistake by his own mother? What about his father, Gabrielle? Is a question you might be asking. Well, Johann and Jace's relationship is a little more tame, but still a little screwed up. Johann Wolmarans, a very respected real estate agent in the north, still had respect for his son, even though he made their family stick out like a sore thumb, quite literally at that, from not only being so tall, but totally going against what was normally accepted in the north. Mostly everything about him was alternative, and he couldn't be bothered to care what anyone thought about him. Anyway, the important thing was that Johann respected him, something his mother didn't do, and his respect was stemming from the reflection of himself that he saw in Jace. Not only did they look quite similar, but Jace also adopted more of his father's family's culture rather than his mother's. His mother comes from Japanese descent, while his father comes from South African descent. Jace wanted no part in the politeness of Japanese culture. Jace was too straightforward for that, and the Afrikaans culture fit him and his personality better. As for the history of the Japanese tattoo under his left eye, you'll have to wait for that episode's release to find out. But eventually his parents got so fed up with him, as Jace was really committing to the alternative look by not only getting his ears pierced, but starting to stretch them as well as getting his first tattoo, which out of all places was on his face. It's the little arrow tattoo that's on the side of his, like on his right side. Again, just another stupid angsty teenager move. They disowned him and kicked him out at 18. Jace wasn't totally bent about this, but the emotional scars and physical trauma he'd been through still took a toll on his self-worth. So he gets into fighting. The Southern Dispater Underground Fighting Ring, to be exact. This is where he meets his current trainer, Matteo, who you'll meet in the story, but more importantly, he meets Iggy. Jace is a very hostile, short-tempered, violence-craving machine running off of pure anger, while Iggy is a money-hungry drug addict that wants to move on to bigger, better things. And they're both young, teenagers to be exact. And Iggy sees this as a business opportunity through betting on Jace's unstoppable hostile nature, but of course he brings the fighter in on his monetary gain, since he's the one doing all the real work. So through this, they get to know each other, their histories, their motivations, what keeps them up at night, all of it. They become best friends, even close enough to be brothers with how much they poke fun at each other and screw around. Also, something that's important to add is for extra money, Jace opens up a tattoo shop with another fighter he meets in the ring a few years later who manages to survive his wrath. This guy's name is Duffy, and you'll have to wait to meet him later, just like Matteo. And yes, I know that sounds a bit corny and intense, like, ooh, surviving his wrath. But I really mean it. Jace's style of fighting is a mixture of Mexican boxing, Muay Thai, and Dambe. The trainers in the gym he goes to, called the District, are a diverse bunch, and they teach him all they know because they see his fiery potential. However, many of them have passed away due to old age mixed with Terabane complications due to the war. But Matteo is still standing. Fast forward 12 years, and we're in the current timeline. He hasn't had any contact with any of his family in the past 12 years, and there's only a small few in the South that know about his Terabane ability. Ooh, don't think I forgot about that now. His ability is probably the coolest, but definitely a little daunting to have. It's precognition. What that means is he can see glimpses into the future. For that to happen, he has to make eye contact with someone, and it really only happens with new people he meets, similar to like a psychic ability. However, if the matter is pressing enough, he can have more than one precognition episode for one person, like no matter the time. It's not really something he has full control over, like Keiko's ability. Like, sure, she has her moments where she uses, or she doesn't want to use her abilities, and it still happens, but she has a better grip on her telekinesis since it's more predictable. Also, yeah, Keiko, who, like I said in her video, she's not like other girls. She's worse. Oh well, yeah. Something about her flicks a little switch in Jace's Ooga Booga brain. What that thing is, you'll have to wait and see. But let's just say his precognition gets a glimpse of some stuff that he knows is looming in their future together. But she has no idea. And since fate is fate, he knows that time is only ticking closer for that to come to fruition. But this isn't all bad, since they do have many similarities, even if they're polar opposites. You know, like him lacking emotion, and her having too much. He's all dark doom and gloom, and she's all bright and sassy. They definitely balance each other out in all the right ways, and, you know, for similarities, they've both been through the ringer, just in different ways, but again, they balance each other out with what they've been through. So, more on this guy's intense look. His look definitely mirrors his music taste very well. All of his tattoos and piercings, his 60mm stretched ears, his dark clothing, leather boots, it all matches up perfectly with his metal taste in music. Bands like Slipknot, preferably old Slipknot, like their self-titled album, Iowa and the Grey Chapter, Lamb of God, Gojira, I Prevail are all his go-tos. And he also liked more alternative metal, like Rob Zombie or Nine Inch Nails. But his real guilty pleasure, Die Antwoord. Yeah. They are on the total opposite spectrum when it comes to genre, but I guess their combination of Afrikaans and vulgar lyrics just really scratches an itch for him. And I think it's a silly little quirk that makes him a little more approachable, even though no one really knows this about him. Of course, other than Iggy. But still, like, the information is out there now. And, you know, it's public domain now, I guess. So I guess that makes him somewhat more approachable and human. But, whew, is that everything? Definitely not. There's only so much I could fit into these videos, and, you know, there's also stuff that I don't want to spoil, because Jace is definitely the character that I've spent the most time on, and that I've had the longest. I know him like the back of my hand. I know pretty much everything about him. And also, if my voice sounds shaky, it's just because I'm, like, shivering, and I'm like, so cold right now. And again, it's the middle of the night. But yeah, so, and with this drawing, I wanted to switch it up a little bit, mainly because I didn't want to draw another, like, typical 3/4 facing pose, like all the other ones. Plus, this angle is pretty much how everyone sees Jace anyway, so it's accurate in that sense, and a nice little tidbit. But yeah, that's all that I have for today's video. It was definitely a lot to compile into one. And I also want to say thank you so much. I can't even, like, put into words how thankful I am for 10,000 subscribers. Like, the fact that I even surpassed that, like, let alone, like 1,000 or, like, 2,000, 3,000, whatever, but, like, 10,000, we're getting into double digits now. That's, like, a big deal. That is a big deal, and I am absolutely mind-boggled. But I'm so appreciative, and I love you all so much, and thank you. Just thank you. And yeah, that's all I have, but I hope you enjoyed. I hope you like the drawing. I hope you like the lore, and yeah. Ciao, ta-ta, toodles.